Captain Vexthara stood on the bridge of the Imperial battlecruiser, Dominion's Edge. Her reptilian eyes scanned the star charts that glowed on the main screen. The ship was huge, stretching nearly 2 miles from front to back. Its dark metal hull carried the marks of many battles across the galaxy. The bridge was filled with different alien species. Tall Zephyrians with their green-scaled skin controlled the main stations. Smaller insect-like Krixtal worked at the sensor panels. Other conquered races filled the lower positions, all wearing the gray uniforms of the Imperial fleet. "Captain, we are approaching the outer edge of Sector 779, reported Lieutenant Keshra from the navigation station. Her voice carried the usual tone of respect that all lower ranks used when speaking to their superiors. Vexthara nodded. The Empire had been expanding for thousands of years. They had conquered over 10,000 worlds and enslaved hundreds of different species. Their technology was the best in the galaxy. Their military had never lost a major battle. Every species they met either joined the Empire willingly or was forced to submit. "Any signs of intelligent life in this sector?" she asked. "Negative, Captain. Our long-range scouts reported only one system with a primitive civilization. They appear to be limited to their home world with basic technology." The captain smiled, showing her sharp teeth. Another easy conquest. The Empire's method was simple and effective. They would arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, and then either accept submission or destroy all resistance. After that, the survivors would be relocated to work worlds or integrated into the Imperial fleet as lower-ranking crew members. Set course for the inhabited system. We will follow standard first contact protocols. The massive ship turned toward the inner system. Its engines hummed with power that could destroy entire cities. The crew prepared for another routine mission. They had done this hundreds of times before. 3 days later, the Dominion's Edge entered the system. The third planet showed signs of a developing civilization. Cities dotted the surface, and primitive satellites orbited the world. The technology level appeared to be several centuries behind Imperial standards. "Captain, we are receiving unusual readings," called out Sensor Officer Nekmar. His insect-like features showed confusion. "There appears to be a ship approaching from the direction of the inhabited planet." Vexthara moved to the main viewing screen. A small vessel appeared on the display. It was tiny compared to their battlecruiser, perhaps only 300 feet long. The design was strange, boxy and practical, rather than the sleek curves of Imperial ships. "Analysis?" she demanded. "The ship appears to be constructed from basic metal alloys. No energy shielding detected. Primitive chemical propulsion with some kind of fusion drive. The design is unlike anything in our databases." The captain laughed. "They are sending one small ship to meet us? How pathetic. Open a communication channel." The main screen flickered and then showed the interior of the alien ship. A bipedal creature with pale skin and short hair looked back at them. It wore a simple blue uniform with strange markings. The being appeared calm, not showing the fear that most species displayed during first contact. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human exploration vessel New Frontier," the creature said in a clear voice. "We welcome you to our system. Please state your intentions." Vexthara was surprised. Most primitive species either ran away or begged for mercy when they saw an Imperial battlecruiser. This human seemed almost relaxed. "I am Captain Vexthara of the Galactic Empire. You will immediately surrender your vessel and submit to Imperial authority. Your species will be evaluated for integration into the Empire." The human called Morrison tilted his head slightly. "I appreciate the introduction, Captain, but I'm afraid we must decline your offer. Humanity values its independence." The bridge fell silent. No one had ever refused Imperial demands so calmly. Other species either attacked in hopeless fury or surrendered immediately. This human acted like he was declining an invitation to dinner. "You do not understand," Vexthara said slowly. "This is not a request. You will comply or face the consequences." "I understand perfectly," Morrison replied. "And I'm telling you that we choose to remain free. If you have peaceful intentions, we're happy to talk. If not, you should leave our system." The captain's anger began to rise. Her tail lashed behind her as she processed this unprecedented situation. "You are one small ship facing the might of the Empire. Your vessel is primitive and defenseless. How do you expect to resist?" Morrison smiled. It was not a threatening expression, but something about it made Vexthara uncomfortable. "Captain, I think you might be surprised by what humans can do when we put our minds to it." "Impossible," she snarled. "You have no weapons that can penetrate our shields. Your technology is centuries behind ours. One shot from our main guns would vaporize your entire ship." "Maybe," Morrison said calmly, "but I wouldn't be so sure about that." Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the bridge. The tactical officer looked up from his station with shock on his face. "Captain, the alien ship has achieved weapon lock on our vessel." "What?" Vexthara spun around. "That's impossible. Our shields make it impossible for primitive weapons to target us." "The lock is confirmed, Captain. Somehow their targeting system is seeing through our defensive screens." The captain stared at the human on the screen. Morrison had not moved, but his calm expression now seemed more threatening. "I don't know what kind of trick this is," she said, "but it will not work. No primitive species has ever stood against the Empire." "Well," Morrison replied, "I guess there's a first time for everything." Vexthara cut the communication and turned to her crew. "Battle stations. Prepare to disable their ship with minimum force. We need to capture some of them alive to understand their technology." As the crew rushed to their positions, the captain looked back at the small human ship on the screen. Something was wrong. This was not following the usual pattern of first contact. The human had been too calm, too confident. "Captain," the tactical officer reported, "we are ready to fire. Target their engines only. I want that ship captured intact." "Yes, Captain." But as the Imperial battlecruiser prepared to fire, Captain Vexthara felt something she had never experienced before during a first contact mission. She felt uncertain. The human's confidence bothered her more than she wanted to admit. The small ship hung in space, waiting. Inside, Jake Morrison and his crew prepared for what might be humanity's first and last battle with the Galactic Empire. Neither side knew that this moment would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the new frontier, looking at the massive Imperial ship that filled their main screen. The battlecruiser was at least 6 times longer than his vessel, and probably carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But Jake had not survived 15 years in the Earth Defense Force by being intimidated by superior numbers. "Lisa, how are our systems looking?" he asked his chief engineer. Lisa Parker looked up from her console. She was a small woman with dark hair, pulled back in a practical ponytail, but her hands moved across the controls with expert precision. "All systems are green, Captain. The railgun batteries are charged and ready. Our targeting computer has a perfect lock on their ship." "Good. Ben, what's your analysis of their weapons?" Weapons Officer Ben Torres studied the data flowing across his screens. He was a quiet man who had served with Jake for over 10 years. "They have energy weapons, Captain. Powerful ones. But they seem to rely on their shields for defense rather than maneuverability." "That's what we expected," Jake said. "Amy, any more communications from them?" Communications specialist Amy Richardson shook her head. Nothing since they cut the channel, Captain. But I'm picking up increased activity on their internal frequencies. They're definitely preparing for something. Jake nodded. The human crew had been preparing for this moment for 3 years. Ever since Earth's long-range sensors had detected the expanding Empire, they had known this day would come. The Empire's pattern was always the same. Demand surrender, destroy resistance, enslave survivors. Humanity had decided they would not go quietly. Captain, Amy reported, incoming transmission from the Imperial ship. Put it through. Captain Vikstara appeared on the screen again. Her reptilian features showed anger and frustration. Human vessel, you have 30 seconds to surrender. After that, we will disable your ship and take you by force. I'm afraid that won't be happening, Jake replied calmly. But I want to make something clear. We don't want to fight you. We just want to be left alone. You have no choice in the matter, Vikstara snarled. The Empire has decided your fate. Actually, we do have a choice, and we choose to defend ourselves. The Imperial captain's laugh was harsh. Defend yourselves? With what? Your primitive weapons cannot even scratch our shields. Jake smiled slightly. Would you like to see? Before Vikstara could respond, Jake nodded to Ben. The weapons officer pressed a single button on his console. The new Frontier's railgun fired a single projectile. The tungsten rod was only 6 inches long and 2 inches wide, but it had been accelerated to nearly 10% of light speed. The projectile struck the Imperial battlecruiser's forward weapon array with devastating precision. On the Empire ship, alarms screamed as the primary gun turret simply vanished in a flash of superheated metal. The crew stared in shock at their displays. Report, Vikstara shouted. Forward weapons array destroyed, Captain, the tactical officer stammered. But that's impossible. Nothing should be able to penetrate our shields. The projectile was pure kinetic energy, the sensor officer added. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and explosive devices. They cannot deflect solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Vikstara stared at the screen in disbelief. The human ship had not only penetrated their defenses, but had done so with surgical precision. They had destroyed the weapons without causing any casualties. Captain, the human called Morrison said, his voice calm, that was a demonstration. We removed one of your weapon systems to show you that we can defend ourselves. No one on your ship was hurt. How did you do that? Vikstara demanded. We've been watching your empire for quite some time, Jake explained. We studied your technology, your tactics, your methods. We knew that eventually you would come to our system, so we prepared. Lisa Parker had spent 2 years modifying their standard railgun system. Instead of the usual chemical propulsion, she had designed electromagnetic accelerators that could push projectiles to incredible speeds. The targeting system used advanced computers that could predict the movement of enemy ships and calculate firing solutions in real time. Your shields are impressive, Jake continued, but they're designed to stop the kinds of weapons your enemies usually use. We took a different approach. One lucky shot means nothing, Vikstara said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. It wasn't luck, Jake replied. Then show her. The new Frontier fired again. This time, the projectile struck the Imperial ship's secondary communications array. The hit was so precise that it destroyed only the target antenna while leaving. The rest of the system intact. 2 for 2, Ben reported quietly. On the Imperial bridge, the crew was beginning to panic. Their most advanced battlecruiser was being picked apart by a ship they had dismissed as primitive. The weapons were unlike anything in their experience. Captain, a tactical officer reported, we still have 70% of our weapons operational. We can destroy them. No, Vikstara said slowly. Not yet. I want to understand what we're facing. She looked at the human on the screen. You said you've been watching us. How? We've been monitoring your communications for years, Amy Richardson explained from her position. We know about your expansion. Methods. We know about the worlds you've conquered and the species you've enslaved. We've been preparing for this day. Preparing how? Jake gestured to his crew. Lisa has been working on weapon systems that can defeat your shields. Ben has been developing new tactical approaches. Amy has been studying your language and communication protocols. We've all been training for this moment. You are still only one ship, Vexthara pointed out. Are we? Jake asked. 2 more ships appeared on the Imperial sensors. They were similar in design to the New Frontier, but with slight variations. The Liberty Bell, commanded by Captain Rick Coleman, moved to the Empire ship's port side. The Pathfinder, under Captain Sandra Walsh, took position to starboard. 3 ships, Vexthara said. Still not enough to defeat a battlecruiser. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But we're not trying to defeat you. We're trying to convince you to leave us alone. The Imperial captain studied the formation. The human ships were small and fast, positioning themselves so that any attack on one would risk hitting the others. Their coordination was perfect, suggesting extensive training and communication systems. What do you want? She asked finally. We want you to go back to your empire and tell them that humanity is not interested in joining, Jake said. We want to be left alone to develop in peace. We're willing to defend ourselves, but we prefer not to fight. The Empire does not negotiate with primitive species. Then maybe it's time for the Empire to learn something new, Jake replied. We're not primitive, Captain. We're just different. We solve problems in ways your Empire hasn't seen before. Vexthara looked at the 3 human ships surrounding her battlecruiser. Each one had demonstrated the ability to penetrate her ship's defenses. If they chose to attack in coordination, they might actually be able to destroy her vessel. You cannot defeat the entire Empire, she said. We don't want to, Jake answered. We just want to be left alone. And if the Empire refuses? Jake's expression became serious. Then we'll have to convince them, 1 ship at a time if necessary. The Imperial captain realized that everything she had believed about technological superiority and military dominance was being challenged by these humans. They had found ways to overcome advantages that had seemed absolute. I will report this encounter to my superiors, she said finally. That's all we ask, Jake replied. And Captain, when you make your report, remember that we could have destroyed your ship. We chose not to. We hope your leaders will remember that. The communication ended, leaving both ships facing each other in the darkness of space. The Empire had met its first real challenge in centuries, and neither side was sure what would happen next. Admiral Korvac stood in the command center of the Imperial Fleet headquarters, his 6 arms crossed in disbelief. The report from Captain Vexthara sat on his desk, but he had read it 3 times and still could not accept what it said. Impossible, he muttered, his voice echoing in the large chamber. No primitive species has ever stood against the Empire. The Admiral was one of the Empire's most decorated officers. In his 200 years of service, he had conquered 47 star systems and enslaved dozens of species. His tactical brilliance had never been questioned, and his loyalty to the Empire was absolute. General Tessara, what is your assessment? And a chitinous exoskeleton that showed the scars of many battles. She had served under Korvac for 50 years and had never seen him show uncertainty. The report is detailed, Admiral. Captain Vexthara is not given to exaggeration. If she says these humans penetrated our shields, then they did. But how? Our defensive systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. Perhaps that is the problem, Tessara suggested. We have become so confident in our superiority that we have not adapted to new threats. Korvac slammed one of his fists on the desk. These humans are from a single world. They have no space empire, no advanced technology, no military tradition. They should have surrendered immediately. Yet they did not, the general pointed out, and they demonstrated weapons that our best ship could not defend against. The admiral paced around the command center, his mind working through the implications. If word of this encounter spread through the Empire, it could encourage other species to resist. The Empire's power was based on the belief that resistance was futile. Assemble Battle Group 7, he ordered. 12 ships, including the dreadnought Eternal Conquest. I want our best crews and most experienced commanders. You intend to destroy them? I intend to show them the true power of the Empire. 1 ship means nothing. Let them face a full battle group and see how their primitive weapons perform. Meanwhile, in the human system, Jake Morrison stood in the briefing room of the New Frontier. Captain Rick Coleman from the Liberty Bell and Captain Sandra Walsh from the Pathfinder sat across from him, along with their senior officers. The Imperial ship left the system 6 hours ago, Amy Richardson reported. Our long-range sensors detected it jumping to hyperspace. They'll be back, Jake said grimly, and they'll bring friends. How many friends? Rick asked. He was a tall man with graying hair who had commanded merchant vessels before joining the exploration fleet. Based on their communication patterns, probably a full battle group, Ben Torres answered. Our analysis suggests 12 to 15 ships. Sandra. Walsh leaned forward. She was younger than the other captains, but had proven herself as a skilled tactician. Can we handle that many? Not in direct combat, Jake admitted, but we don't have to fight them the way they expect. Lisa Parker activated a holographic display showing the solar system. We've been preparing for this possibility. Over the past 3 years, we've built automated defense platforms throughout the system. The display showed dozens of small installations hidden in asteroid fields and around the outer planets. Each platform was powered by a compact fusion reactor and armed with the same railgun technology that had proven effective against Imperial shields. The platforms are controlled by our main computer system, Lisa explained. They can coordinate their fire to create overlapping fields of coverage. What about their numbers advantage? Rick asked. Numbers can work against them, Sandra suggested. If we can force them to operate in a confined space, they'll have trouble maneuvering without hitting each other. Jake nodded. That's exactly what we're planning. We'll use the asteroid belt as a natural barrier. Their large ships will have difficulty navigating through it, but our smaller vessels can move freely. There's something else, Amy added. I've been monitoring Imperial communications. The Empire uses a lot of different species in their fleets. Many of them are conquered peoples who serve, because they have no choice. What's your point? Rick asked. If we can show them that the Empire can be defeated, some of them might decide to stop fighting for their oppressors. Jake considered this. Psychological warfare. Make them question whether the Empire is as invincible as they've been told. It's worth trying, Sandra agreed, but we need to be careful. If we push too hard, we might unite them against us. The discussion continued for several hours as they refined their strategy. The humans knew they were facing overwhelming odds, but they also knew that giving up was not an option. Earth's entire population was counting on them to protect humanity's freedom. 3 days later, the Imperial battle group arrived in the system. Admiral Korvac himself commanded the fleet from the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, a massive dreadnought. That stretched nearly 4 miles from bow to stern. Sensor report, he ordered. Multiple contacts, Admiral, the sensor officer reported. The 3 ships from the previous encounter are present, along with what appears to be a large number of automated defense platforms. Korvac studied the tactical display. The human ships were positioned near the asteroid belt, using the rocky debris as cover. The defense platforms were scattered throughout the system, creating a network of potential threats. "They have been busy," General Tissara observed. "It does not matter," the Admiral replied. "We will demonstrate the futility of resistance. Open a channel to the human ships." Jake's face appeared on the main screen. He looked calm despite facing. "Odds of 12-3. Admiral Korvac," Jake said, somehow knowing the Imperial commander's name. "We hoped you would reconsider your position. How do you know my name?" Korvac demanded. "We've been monitoring your communications for quite some time," Amy Richardson explained from her position. "We know about your military record, your tactics, and your reputation." The Admiral felt a chill. If the humans had been intercepting Imperial communications, they might know far more than anyone had realized. "It does not matter what you know," he said. "You face the might of the Empire. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." "We've already told you that we're not interested in surrendering," Jake replied. "But we're still willing to talk. There is nothing to discuss. You will submit to Imperial authority or be destroyed." "Admiral," Jake said seriously, "I want you to think about something. We're willing to fight and die for our freedom. Are your crews willing to fight and die for your empire?" Korvac cut the communication and turned to his tactical officer. "All ships, prepare for attack. We will destroy their defense platforms first, then eliminate their ships." "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving signals from the human platforms. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies." "What kind of signals?" "They appear to be messages directed at our crew members. Different languages, different species." On screens throughout the Imperial fleet, Amy Richardson's voice could be heard speaking in dozens of languages. She was talking to the Zephyrians, the Krikstal, the Vorthik, and all the other conquered species that served in the Imperial fleet. "Citizens of the galaxy," she said, "you have been told that the Empire cannot be defeated. You have been told that resistance is futile, but we are here to show you that this is not true." "Cut those transmissions," Korvac ordered. "We're trying, Admiral. But they're using frequencies we can't block without shutting down our own communications." The human message continued. "We are humans from Earth. We are not advanced. We are not numerous. We are not powerful. But we are free, and we intend to stay that way." Throughout the Imperial fleet, crew members who had served the Empire for generations began to listen. For the first time in their lives, they heard someone openly defying their masters and living to tell about it. "We know that many of you serve the Empire because you have no choice," Amy continued. "But we want you to know that choice exists. Freedom is possible. You do not have to live as slaves forever." Admiral Korvac realized that the humans were not just fighting a military battle. They were fighting for the hearts and minds of his own crews. And for the first time in his long career, he was not sure he could win. General Tissara watched the tactical display with growing concern. The human broadcasts were having an effect on the Imperial fleet. She could see hesitation in the crew movements, uncertainty in their responses to orders. "Admiral, we should attack immediately," she advised, "before their propaganda spreads further." Admiral Korvac nodded grimly. "All ships, attack formation. Target the defense platforms first. Show them the price of defiance." The Imperial battle group moved forward, their massive ships spreading out in a classic assault formation. The Dreadnought Eternal Conquest led the charge, its weapon systems charging for the first devastating salvo. "Incoming transmission from the human ships," the communications officer reported. "Ignore it," Korvac ordered. "We have heard enough of their lies." But throughout the fleet, crew members were still listening to Amy Richardson's broadcasts. She had switched to a personal approach, speaking directly to different species about their home worlds and their families. To the Zephyrians serving on the Imperial ships, she said, we know about your world. We know it was conquered 300 years ago. We know your people were told they had no choice but to serve or die. But there is always a choice. On the bridge of the heavy cruiser Dominator, Captain Vexthara found herself listening, despite her attempts to focus on the battle. The human's words stirred something inside her that she had buried long ago. Your ancestors were free once, Amy continued. They had their own culture, their own government, their own dreams. The Empire took that from them, but it doesn't have to stay gone forever. Captain, the tactical officer called out, we're in weapons range of the first defense platform. Vexthara looked at the display. The platform was small and appeared defenseless, but she had learned not to trust appearances when dealing with humans. Fire, she ordered. The cruiser's main gun discharged a brilliant beam of energy that struck the platform directly. But instead of being destroyed, the platform's shields absorbed the blast and immediately returned fire. The tungsten rod struck the cruiser's forward section, punching through the armor plating like it was made of paper. The ship shuddered under the impact, and alarms began sounding throughout the vessel. Damage report, Vexthara shouted. Forward armor penetrated, Captain. No hull breach, but our forward shields are down to 60%. Across the fleet, similar scenes were playing out. The Imperial ships were discovering that the human defense platforms were far more dangerous than they appeared. Each platform was equipped with the same railgun technology that had proven so effective against Imperial shields. All platforms are active, Ben Torres reported from the New Frontier. They're coordinating their fire automatically. Jake watched the battle unfold on his tactical display. The Imperial ships were powerful, but they were not prepared for the kind of warfare the humans had developed. The platforms were small and difficult to target, while their weapons could penetrate Imperial defenses with ease. Sandra, take the Pathfinder around to their flank, he ordered. Rick, ring the Liberty Bell up behind them. We're going to show them what happens when they're caught between multiple firing positions. The human ships moved with practiced precision, using the asteroid belt as cover. They had spent months training in this environment, learning to navigate the rocky debris field at high speed. The Imperial ships, designed for open space combat, found themselves at a severe disadvantage. Their massive size made them easy targets, while the asteroid field limited their ability to maneuver. Admiral, General Tisara reported, we're taking heavy damage from the defense platforms. Our shields are being overwhelmed. How is that possible? Korvac demanded. They're using primitive kinetic weapons. The weapons may be primitive, but they're highly effective, the tactical officer explained. The projectiles are moving at near light speed. Our shields cannot deflect pure kinetic energy at those velocities. On the bridge of the Eternal Conquest, alarms were sounding as the massive dreadnought came under attack from multiple directions. The human ships were using hit-and-run tactics, striking quickly and then disappearing back into the asteroid field. We cannot maintain formation in this environment, Tisara observed. The asteroids are preventing our ships from supporting each other. Then we adapt, Korvac replied. Order all ships to spread out. We'll engage them individually. But as the Imperial ships separated, they found themselves even more vulnerable. The human defense platforms had been positioned to create overlapping fields of fire, and the scattered Imperial vessels were exposed to attacks from multiple directions. Lisa. Parker watched the battle from her engineering station. The platforms are performing better than expected, she reported. Their targeting systems are achieving a 93% hit rate. How long can they maintain this level of fire? Jake asked. Each platform has enough ammunition for approximately 200 shots. At current rates, they'll be depleted in about 30 minutes. Then we need to make those shots count. Jake opened a channel to the other human ships. Rick, Sandra, It's time for Phase 2. Target their command ships. The 3 human vessels converged on the Imperial flagship. The Eternal Conquest was a massive target, but it was also heavily armored and shielded. It would take coordinated fire to penetrate its defenses. "Ben, do we have a firing solution?" Jake asked. "Affirmative." "Captain, all 3 ships are in position. Fire." The combined railgun barrage from all 3 human ships struck the dreadnought simultaneously. The tungsten rods punched through the ship's forward shields and armor, causing massive internal damage. The bridge shook violently as systems overloaded. Throughout the vessel, "Damage report." Korvac shouted over the alarms. "Major structural damage to sections 7 through 12. The damage control officer reported. "We've lost main power to the forward weapon systems." For the first time in his career, Admiral Korvac felt the cold touch of defeat. His flagship, the pride of the Imperial fleet, was being systematically destroyed by ships a fraction of its size. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving reports from the other ships. The destroyer Swift Death has lost main power. The cruiser Iron Fist is requesting permission to withdraw." Withdraw? Korvac could barely believe what he was hearing. "Imperial ships do not withdraw." "Sir," General Tisara said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a tactical retreat. We can regroup and develop new strategies." But even as she spoke, the human broadcasts continued. Amy Richardson's voice could be heard throughout the fleet, speaking words that many of the crew members had never heard before. "You have a choice," she said. "You can continue to fight and die for an empire that sees you as expendable, or you can choose to live for something better. You can choose freedom." On the bridge of the heavy cruiser Dominator, Captain Vexthara found herself facing a decision she had never imagined. Her ship was badly damaged, her crew was demoralized, and the human words were echoing in her mind. "Captain," her tactical officer said, "we're receiving orders to continue the attack." Vexthara looked at her crew. They were mostly conquered species, fighting for an empire that had enslaved their worlds. For the first time, she wondered if they were fighting for the right side. "Captain?" the tactical officer repeated. "Hold. Position," she said finally. "Do not fire unless fired upon." Similar scenes were playing out throughout the Imperial fleet. Crew members who had served the Empire without question were beginning to ask themselves why they were fighting. The human demonstration of successful resistance was showing them that alternatives existed. Admiral Korvac realized that he was not just losing a battle. He was losing the loyalty of his own forces. The humans had found a way to turn the Empire's greatest strength, its diversity, into a weakness. "All ships," he ordered, "prepare for strategic withdrawal." The words tasted like poison in his mouth, but he knew he had no choice. The battle was lost, and continuing to fight would only result in more casualties. The Empire would need to develop new strategies if it hoped to deal with the human threat. As the Imperial ships began to retreat, Jake Morrison felt a mixture of relief and concern. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The Empire would return, and next time, they would be prepared for human tactics. "Captain," Amy Richardson reported, "we're receiving communications from several of the Imperial ships. Some of them are requesting asylum." Jake nodded. The psychological warfare had been more effective than they had hoped. But he knew that this was only the beginning. The Empire would not give up easily, and humanity would need to prepare for an even greater challenge. The battle was over, but the real fight for freedom was just beginning. Emperor Zargoth the Conqueror sat on his throne in the heart of the Imperial Palace, reading the report from Admiral Korvac for the 5th time. The massive chamber was silent, except for the soft hum of the planet's generators far below. His 4 red eyes scanned the words again, but they did not change. The Empire had suffered its first major military defeat in over 800 years. "This cannot be accurate," he said to the assembled council. His voice carried the authority of absolute power, but there was something else there now: uncertainty. Admiral Korvac stood before the throne, his uniform bearing the scars of battle. His 6 arms were held at his sides in a position of respect, but his posture showed the weight of failure. "The report is accurate, Your Majesty," Korvac said quietly. "The humans defeated a full battle group using tactics we had never encountered before." "Humans," the Emperor repeated the word like it was poison. "A species from a single world. No space empire. No advanced technology. How is this possible?" Minister Velthek, the Empire's chief strategist, stepped forward. His insectoid features clicked nervously as he spoke. "The humans appear to have developed weapons specifically designed to counter our defensive systems. Their kinetic projectiles can penetrate our shields. Then we will develop better shields," Zargoth declared. "It may not be that simple, Your Majesty," General Tissara said from her position beside the Admiral. "The humans did not defeat us through superior technology alone. They used psychological warfare against our crews." The Emperor's expression darkened. "Explain." "They broadcast messages to our forces during the battle," Tissara continued. "They spoke to the different species in our fleet, reminding them of their home worlds and their freedom before the Empire conquered them." "And this affected our forces?" "Several ships requested permission to withdraw. Some crew members asked for asylum with the humans. The effectiveness of our fleet was reduced by internal dissent." Emperor Zargoth rose from his throne, his massive form towering over the assembled council. For over 300 years, he had ruled the Empire through strength and fear. The idea that a primitive species could undermine his authority was unthinkable. "We will crush them," he declared. "I will personally lead a fleet of 1,000 ships. We will reduce their world to ash." "Your Majesty," Minister Velthek said. "Carefully. Perhaps we should consider other options." "What other options?" "They have defied the Empire. They must be destroyed. They have also demonstrated capabilities that could be useful to us," the minister pointed out. "Their weapons technology is primitive but effective. Their tactical innovations could benefit our military. You suggest we negotiate with them?" "I suggest we consider all possibilities before committing to a war that could spread throughout the Empire." The Emperor's anger was visible in the way his claws extended from his fingers. "The Empire does not negotiate with inferior species." But what if they are not inferior?" Admiral Korvac asked quietly. The throne room fell silent. No one had ever questioned the Empire's superiority before, especially not in the presence of the Emperor. "Explain yourself, Admiral," Zargoth said dangerously. "The humans defeated us not because they were more advanced, but because they thought differently," Korvac said. "They found solutions to problems we did not even know existed. They turned our strengths into weaknesses. They are still just one species from one world." "Yes, Your Majesty. But word of their victory is spreading through the Empire. Our intelligence networks report increased activity on conquered worlds. Some species are beginning to ask questions they have not asked in generations." Emperor Zargoth understood the implications immediately. The Empire's power was based on the belief that resistance was futile. If that belief was shattered, the consequences could be catastrophic. Meanwhile, in the human system, Jake Morrison stood in the communication center of the new frontier, speaking with the leaders of Earth's government. The holographic images of President Karen Taylor and Defense Secretary Paul Jackson flickered in the display. "The Imperial fleet withdrew 6 hours ago," Jake reported. "We estimate they lost 3 ships and suffered major damage to 5 others. Our casualties were minimal." "Outstanding work, Captain," President Taylor said. "But we know they'll be back." "Yes, ma'am." probably with a much larger force. Defense Secretary Jackson leaned forward. "What are our options?" "We continue preparing," Jake replied. "Lisa's team is working on improvements to our weapons systems. Ben is developing new tactical approaches. And Amy is refining our psychological warfare capabilities." "What about the Imperial crew members who requested asylum?" the president asked. "We have 47 individuals from 6 different species aboard our ships," Amy Richardson reported from her station. "They're providing valuable intelligence about Imperial military structure and technology. Are they trustworthy?" "They seem genuine," Jake said. "They've all expressed a desire to return to their homeworlds and help organize resistance movements." President Taylor nodded. "What about diplomatic contact?" "We've prepared a message for the Imperial leadership," Jake explained. "We're offering to share some of our technologies in exchange for recognition as a sovereign species and a guarantee of non-interference." "Do you think they'll accept?" "Honestly, probably not. The Empire doesn't seem to understand the concept of equality. But we have to try." Back on the Imperial throne world, Emperor Zargoth had called an emergency session of the full council. Representatives from all the major military and political factions were present. "The situation is worse than we initially believed," Minister Velthok reported. "Intelligence indicates that resistance movements are forming on 17 different worlds. The humans' victory has inspired species that have been quiet for centuries." "Then we crush the resistance movements," the Emperor declared. "That would require diverting significant military resources," Admiral Korvac pointed out. "Resources we may need for dealing with the human threat. We also need to consider the economic implications," added Finance Minister Kiktar. "The Empire depends on tribute from conquered worlds. If those worlds rebel, our economy could collapse." Emperor Zargoth felt the weight of his crown for the first time in centuries. The humans had created a crisis that threatened the very foundation of his empire. "What do the humans want?" he asked finally. "According to their latest transmission, they want to be left alone," General Tisara replied. "They're offering to share some of their military innovations in exchange for recognition and a non-aggression agreement." "They would share their weapons technology?" "Selected technologies, yes. They seem to believe that cooperation is preferable to war." The Emperor considered this. The human weapons had proven devastatingly effective against Imperial defenses. If the Empire could incorporate those innovations into their own military, they might be able to maintain their dominance over other species. "What guarantee do we have that they would honor such an agreement?" he asked. "None," Admiral Korvac admitted. "But what guarantee do we have that we can defeat them militarily?" The question hung in the air, like a challenge to everything the Empire represented. For the first time in his reign, Emperor Zargoth faced a problem that could not be solved through overwhelming force. "Contact the humans," he said finally. "Tell them we are willing to discuss terms." The council erupted in shocked murmurs. The Emperor of the Galaxy was about to negotiate with the species he had intended to enslave. "Your Majesty," Minister Velthok said carefully, "this could be seen as a sign of weakness." "Or it could be seen as wisdom," Zargoth replied. "The humans have shown us that there are different ways to solve problems. Perhaps it is time for the Empire to learn something new." As news of the Emperor's decision spread through the palace, the implications became clear. The galaxy was about to witness something unprecedented. The Empire was going to treat another species as an equal. On Earth, President Taylor received the Imperial transmission with a mixture of relief and apprehension. The immediate threat of annihilation had passed, but the real work was just beginning. "Jake," she said during their next communication, "you and your crews have given humanity a chance. Now we need to make the most of it." "We understand, ma'am. We'll be ready for whatever comes next." As Jake looked out at the stars from the bridge, Of the new frontier, he reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had faced the might of a galactic empire and emerged victorious, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through ingenuity, determination, and a simple refusal to accept that freedom was impossible. The galaxy would never be the same. The age of unchallenged imperial expansion was over, and a new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. For the first time in centuries, conquered species across the galaxy began to believe that resistance was not futile. And in the darkness of space, humanity's small ships continued their watch, ready to defend the freedom they had fought so hard to preserve.